What's up guys, how's it going, and welcome to the Mina channel. Today we're gonna have an interesting video here. As you can see, I'm wearing my Persona 25th anniversary shirt because this is the Post Mortem of Persona 25th anniversary. So if you've been in the news for a minute now, they had completely finished with the 25th anniversary this time, and this is gonna be a video discussing pretty much everything from the beginning of the announcements all the way to the end. We're gonna go in chronological order, but at the same time I want to address what I will consider the good, the bad, and the ugly of the series. I think overall this 25th anniversary has really shown a lot of the issues that they had with planning this thing, and I do think there are some things behind the scenes that maybe they had different plans and they were like either pushed on the side because of some other reason, or they just simply didn't plan it well. And yeah, so we're just gonna talk about this. So before anything else, we're gonna talk about the good, because I feel like although they really messed up this time around, there were still some pretty good stuff that we can take out of this. And I don't want to just be a negative video where I'm just kind of going on the negative stuff or anything like that, because at the end of the day, I do think there were some pretty positive things to get out of this 25th anniversary, even though overall I feel like this was a pretty badly handled. So let's go ahead and jump into it with the good. So some of the good stuff, I think obviously we can agree, all the ports that they have done so far, it's a pretty positive aspect of the anniversary, whether it's something like Persona 4 Arena, which was the first port that announced, or the ports for Persona 3, 4, and 5, which are coming out in the next few months. Overall, I feel like this is a good announcement. I feel like if there's anything out of the announcements that I'll say this was the 25th anniversary, I'll say this was the 25th anniversary. All of these announcements basically made it what it was, and I feel like it was pretty well handled in that regard. I don't think that they messed up on that. I think the announcements were very poorly executed, but overall the ports itself is very goodness. Another thing that I do think is actually pretty cool is the fact that they restored the Atlas shop store. They used to have this back in the day, but they closed it recently, a few years ago, and they reopened it now under the branding Atlas West shop, which for better or worse, I think it is a good thing. They brought a lot of merch because of the 25th anniversary, both in Japan and in the West, and I will say this is very much one of the very few times where you could actually get merch for things like Persona 1 or Persona 2 or even Persona 3, which even though it is a big game, I've barely seen any merch in the past. So it is good that this actually was one of the things that they did. So that's pretty much on the good part. Unfortunately, I don't really have much more positive things to say in that regard. I do have some issues with both the concert and a lot of the handling, so when I go ahead and move into the bad, and the first thing that I feel like is one of the bad things that they did this time around is the organization of this event overall. I feel like it was very poorly executed. Originally it was announced as 7 announcements, and obviously I think in that regard the bad is also the way that they built hype around that, because to me and many others this made it seem like it was going to be like this massive thing, to the point that it almost felt like, yeah, they were going to announce big things like Persona 6 or maybe a new Persona 5 game or something of that nature. It really made it feel like these were going to be big announcements, and not only on the side of like, oh, we're teasing these 7 announcements, but also the fact that they kept adding new announcements. The merch seemed really oddly pointing at some new games as well and everything. If you look at the really early merch and the way they're promoting that, really felt that way. And of course the concert as well, which was one of the biggest ones, where they announced this concert and then much later on they announced, oh, by the way, we're actually not going to be announcing new games at the concert, after people have already purchased tickets for that. I don't know if they were able to get refunds for that stuff or not, because I actually never bought a ticket for the event. I'm one of those people that I'm very cautious, and I was like, okay, this event's at 3 in the morning, and I don't know if I'm gonna be able to be awake at that time for the event starts. And also personally, I just thought it was weird that they announced that, but we didn't have much information. So when they announced there were not gonna be actually any games in it, I was kind of like, man, I kind of dodged a bullet there, and it felt odd. At the same time of like being like, oh, that's kind of cool, also felt like, damn, that is kind of bad. And the way that they really approached this whole planning of the event, it did feel kind of hollow in that regard. Overall, I think this was probably the worst part of that there was a lot of hype build up to it, not a lot of delivery in that aspect, but at the same time I feel like the expectations were just not managed. Alos really does not have a lot of good communication, especially in the West, with the audience. Nowadays it's a little bit better. I'll say I give the props to the team that does the media at Atlas West, because they do a lot more stuff. They you see them memeing around on Twitter and that kind of stuff. They are getting better, and I do think that they are doing a pretty good job in that regard. But overall, as a company, I feel like the Atlas doesn't really communicate enough with the all the fans and all the people that are really supporting their games and everything since day one. It does feel almost like a slap on the face in that regard, and that leads to the ugly of the Persona 25th anniversary. And I feel like that's really the worst part of it. A lot of these announcements, although I did talk about some of the cool announcements, some of the ugliest announcements were actually events in Japan. I think that this was one of the things where it really did feel like a slap in the face to the Western community, because yes, we are not entitled to anything particularly, and I don't want to come across as somebody that is being entitled in this particular instance, but I do feel like, as someone that does not live in Japan but is a fan of this kind of stuff, and you look at other brands or other companies, for example Square Enix, for example, they do have events, but they do them worldwide. For example, they have concerts, like at these Strings concerts, and they do them worldwide. You can actually go and watch them. I've seen some of those prior, and they are really cool. Of course, there are some Japan-only things that you can only get at certain events and stuff like that, but I actually seen those bring them to the West as well in aspects. Unfortunately, they actually only brought 2 events from the Persona 25th anniversary to America, and both of them were actually in California, which is actually on the other side of the country for me. So there was no way for me to be able to even plan to go, because it was too late. That's the kind of stuff that I feel they could have announced like way earlier in advance. So we're talking about like probably months in advance, because I cannot just plan a trip in a month and be like, okay, well, let's go to Japan, or let's go to California for this particular event or something like that. The events just were not really planned out on a ride. Particularly Japanese events look really cool. I'm not gonna lie, some of these events look like stuff that I would actually like to go and see, not just because of my fan, but also because, I mean, it's a Persona cafe, or like they did have a whole like mini convention type of thing with the with one of the events, and it did feel like something that was meant to cater towards the fans. Unfortunately, it only felt like it was catering towards Japanese fans, and that did at the end of the day feel like that was the ugliest part of the 25th anniversary, where it really did feel like they were neglecting half of the community, if you will, because at the end of the day, I feel like sales-wise, although the games are pretty big in Japan, they do sell really well in the West, or not just the West, but outside of Japan, they do sell really well. Not to mention other countries like Asia or Europe, they really don't get anything of that stuff at all. Like it's just pretty terrible in that regard. Of course, going global, a small company like Atlas, so how they've been really small in the past, they're kind of catching up to a bigger audience, and they are really needing to grow to get there, because I feel like they're still thinking very small. They're still thinking how they were doing maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago. But with the success of Persona 5, I do feel like they need to get their stuff together and really kind of know that they have now a bigger audience than they ever had before, and that will be my biggest advice for them. I think that overall the 25th anniversary wasn't horrible per se. I know a lot of people really hated it. They have pretty wide vocabulary for that. Overall, I think personally I was just disappointed. I think the way that it was handled made it seem like more than it actually was. Atlas is not very good at doing this kind of stuff, to be frank. In the past, they never really done much. But if you look at other celebrations that they done recently, for example, they did the celebration for both Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne, where they released the HD remaster, as well as the concert that they had. And then when they did the Soul Hackers 2 announcement, those are actually excellent ways to show that Atlus can make good announcements if they are planned correctly and you know, mastered correctly, because it was just one thing. They just went, dropped it up, hey, this is the game, this is the announcement, there you go, have a good day. That was kind of it, you know. And I feel like at the end of the day, this long drawn out yearly celebration of Persona 25th anniversary just didn't pan out the way that they were hoped. And of course, as fans, I feel like we didn't actually get what we were hoping as well. Anyway, that's pretty much it for today, guys. I was trying to address everything in a way that it made sense, but also not be super rude. I'm not here to shit talk or anything like that. I just want to talk about my perspective, my thoughts, what I thought about the work, what I thought it didn't work. But let me know in the comments down below, how do you feel about all this? Did you like it? Did you not? Do you hope that in the future they do better things? Or do you just want not to do it again? I personally just feel leaning into, let's just not do this again, please. Like, just don't do another celebration like this. Just drop announcements and that's it. I think that's the biggest takeaway for me is don't do this 7 announcement thing. Just hey, here's the new ports, have a good day. That's it, right? I feel like that will just work better for me. Anyway, thanks so much for watching this, guys. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye. But before we end this video, I want to thank all the members: Miko, Another Fox, Demicro, H2DK, King Narukami 45, Ita McNeil, and Rising Oblivion. Thank you so much, guys, for your support. I couldn't make these videos without your help.